Back in the 80s, a pack of kids on bicycles with flashlights would be lucky to do one world or town-saving gesture by sneaking out on the adults once. It could be rescue an adorable alien or find a pirate treasure to satisfy a lien with a lien holder who apparently accepts pirate treasure. But the kids from Hawkins, Indiana have saved existence 3 times now, going on 4. With all that world-saving, events pile up. So what's the story so far for the kids of Hawkins? We got 10 minutes, so start the clock. And what do you mean the clock already started? Alright then, let's go! Long before a group of Dungeons and Dragons playing kids met a kid with crazy powers and a key to an underworld full of eldritch horrors, the seeds for Hawkins' doom were sowed. And it wasn't even in Hawkins. It was a series of less than ethical experimentation with mind-altering drugs and other behavioral modifications as a tool or weapon. That program started in 1953, and it includes one Dr. Brenner. This becomes important later. In 1959, Victor Creel moved his family to a house in Hawkins in the hopes that his troubled son Henry would benefit from all the nature. He did not. He continued to foster his telekinetic abilities in increasingly brutal ways until he folded his mother and sister like origami before passing out. Dad Victor took the blame and, just for an extra level of creepy, sliced his eyes and was committed to Penhurst Mental Hospital. In 1970, Terry Ives participated in an MK Ultra experiment without knowing that she was pregnant. During pregnancy, she participated in mind-altering drug experiments and sensory deprivation. Being the rather unethical program that it was, Dr. Brenner took the child and passed it off as a miscarriage. Without evidence, she was not able to get her daughter back legally. That birth happened in 1971, when all of our tiny heroes were born. In 1978, Terry took another swing at getting Jane her daughter back, but failed. In that same year, 8, aka Callie, also made it out to form a vigilante revenge squad. In 1979, 11 bonds with what she thought was an orderly who eventually convinces her to use her mind powers to remove his limiter. Because he was not a kindly orderly, he was patient zero for kids with mind powers, Henry Creel, the Henry Creel, who folded his mother and sister. Naturally, he goes on a full rampage until 11 stepped in and had a contest of powers, eventually opening up a portal to the Upside Down and shoving Henry through it, where he became a being of unimaginable horror, as you do. All of that happens in flashbacks or exposition as our show picks up in 1983, when a strangely less articulate 11 is using her mind powers to eavesdrop on Russians, training her to be an astral spy. There, she encounters a monster. Being the nice and ethical scientists that they are, with an abundance of concern for their charges, they ask her to go find it again, which works. I mean, not great. The monster escapes, 11 escapes. Things are all downhill from here. The party breaks up their Dungeons and Dragons game and head home. Ooh, not so fast, Will. You won't be going home. You will be going into this dark underworld that will become known as the Upside Down because 12-year-olds named it. Party member Mike's sister Nancy goes to a cool kid party with her reluctant, not as cool friend Barb. Traditionally, in a horror movie, the kids that go off to do naked stuff and drugs, yeah, they usually get murdered by the strangely moralistic killers, and the bookish person figures out a way to stop the killer. Well, the creature that will be dubbed a Demogorgon knows what's up. He goes and kills the bookish Barb right off the bat. Barb probably would have had this solved by episode 5. Now we barely have to think about Barb ever again. Will's mom Joyce has a hard time convincing anyone that her boy is still alive. Well, adults. Except to Sheriff Hopper. Eventually, they'll find out that Dr. Brenner from the Hawkins National Laboratories had ties to MK Ultra. The rest of the party is on board and goes looking for Will, but finds 11 instead. Mike makes her a hideout in his basement. Joyce does make contact with Will via a method that doesn't at all lend credence to the idea that she's losing it, a Christmas light alphabet on her wall. Eventually, 11 confronts the monster with her mind powers and appears to sacrifice herself to destroy it. Dr. Brenner is severely injured by the beast and never heard from again. Except when we hear from him again, but until then, Dr. Sam Owens takes over the lab. a sad Mike who has formed a connection with the strange girl he hid in his basement, and Sheriff Hopper who starts leaving Eggo waffles in the woods for no particular reason. Well, aside from the fact that 11 loves Eggo waffles. 1984 comes complete with the movie Ghostbusters. Joyce starts dating the nicest guy in the world, Bob Newsby. Will is being monitored for residual weirdness for which he has bunches. Fortunately, Dr. Owens actually seems concerned for his well-being. Will is prone to going into trances where he feels like he's back in the Upside Down, which manifests as the kids are trying to find Mad Max. The kid who's so good at video games they get to put in an extra set of initials.
Max is Mad Max.
Yeah, I'm busy.
But
that would be Max Mayfield, a new arrival in Hawkins who will end up in the party once she's let in on all the crazy nonsense. The Hollands hire that Murray guy to find out what happened to Barb. Someone has to worry about Barb. As important as it is to pry the mind flayer from Will's mind, it's actually our favorite conspiracy theorist and researcher getting justice for Barb that has the biggest effect. He's the one who tells Nancy and Jonathan that you cannot tell the public about the network of portals to Eldritch horrors, but you can create a palatable lie to get the same results, getting Hawkins' research laboratory shut down. There's some running and screaming. The nicest guy in all of Hawkins, Bob Newby, makes the big sacrifice to help everyone escape Hawkins' lab. The Mind Flayer gets put back where he belongs, kinda. The kinder, gentler Dr. Owen hooks 11 up with a fake birth certificate as Hopper's daughter. Of course, there's still people out there looking for 11, so she doesn't really get to live the life of a teenager. Except that her and Mike discover kissing, something that Hopper is not a fan of. Joyce talks Hopper into writing down a heartfelt letter to express what 11 means to him and why he worries. But being Hopper, he instead decides to threaten Mike. Being young teenagers, the couple handles it terribly. The Russian science lab under the mall has been completed. That's where Steve has found employment at Scoops Ahoy with Robin, who he'll find out has similar tastes. Steve and the party are pretty tight at this point, especially Dustin, who's returned from science camp with tales of a new girlfriend, one that he's having trouble raising on his ham radio. He is able to pick up Russian communications though.
What? I intercepted a secret Russian communication.
Max's stepbrother has moved up from terrible to vessel for Eldritch horror. Joyce and Hopper kidnap a Russian scientist who they take to Murray and unravel the whole terrible scheme to open a portal to the Upside Down under a mall. Dustin's girlfriend comes through in a clutch moment, but only after insisting on a duet of the theme to the never-ending story. Keys are turned, portals are destroyed, along with them all. Oh, and Max's brother Billy. And Hopper. Well, that's a maybe on Hopper. That's about enough for the Byers family, who now adopted 11 since, well, Hopper's... They think he's dead, but really he's been transported to Russia. How? Don't worry about it. The party joins the Hellfire Club, a Dungeons & Dragons group with the intense but grows on you Eddie Munson as the metalhead dungeon master. Okay. Nancy and Jonathan, as well as Mike and 11, discover the hassles of a long-distance relationship. Elle has lost her powers, but not her spunk, so when some mean girls pick on her, in front of Mike no less, she force-feeds one of them a roller skate. Dr. Owen has to come in and pull 11 out of the local jail before people start to notice she doesn't quite exist. A whole new threat from the Upside Down emerges in the form of Vecna, yet another monster that correlates to the group's D&D name. Vecna's whole game is to reach into your mind and burn you out before giving you a severe case of bonitis. When the head cheerleader ends up knotted up after last being seen with Eddie, Eddie takes the blame and goes on the lam. Well, he hides out in a cabin. Lucas's new friends, the basketball team, are basically awful and hunting down Eddie. Dr. Owen takes 11 back to Dr. Brenner, who unlocks her memory with her time with Henry Creel, aka One, aka Vecna, all in service of not only getting her powers back, but turning them all the way back up. Nancy is ping-ponged back to Steve. After finding an open gate, half the kids end up in the Upside Down, where they discover that the place is frozen in time, especially when Elle opened the door and let the Demogorgon loose. In the meantime, Joyce and Murray head to Russia after finding out that Hopper is alive and not well necessarily, as he's being held in a Russian gulag. And that's every important event that's happened so far. What's next for our intrepid kids on bikes with flashlights? We'll find out in July when part 2 of season 4 starts streaming. The real question is whether Vecna's the final boss, or if he's the Darth Vader to the Mind Flayer's Grand Moff Tarkin, or Emperor Palpatine. We're on a path to a rematch of the Battle of the Minds with both Eleven and Henry Vecna leveled up. Expect plenty of intense stares and nosebleeds.